Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report this weekend. Joe Vaclavic and Mike North joining us to talk markets. All right, Joe, I'll start with you because we did see grain prices pressured this week. Why?
Two things. Let's start with corn. I think we've got a supply problem in the United States. The crop's going to be really big, probably a record. Probably not as big as USDA would have indicated last month, but still very big. The farmer is undersold. There are a lot of new crop bushels. The vast majority of this year's corn crop has not been priced, hedged, sold. And I think the market's aware that that selling is going to enter the marketplace sometime in the next few weeks. The farmer as a whole across the nation can't store his entire crop, both logistically for that reason and also because they need the cash flow. I think that's your problem in corn. In soybeans, it's a different problem. We've got a demand problem. China hasn't bought a single bushel of soybeans for current marketing year delivery. To give you some statistics, in this marketing year that just ended at the end of August, China bought 826 million bushels of U.S. soybeans. That's what we shipped them. That was 19% of last year's crop. Until they come in and start buying beans, or until somebody comes in and replaces what they would typically buy, the soybean market's going to have a problem.
Mike, but Joe listed all of those things that are pressuring prices. None of that is new. I mean, we knew farmers would need to sell heading into harvest. We knew this was potentially a big crop in corn, and we know China's not buying. So why is this still pressuring prices this week?
Well, we continue to be overvalued in the world market, and if we want to try to compete to gain any attention in the world space, we're going to have to move lower. And everything that Joe cited is spot on. You look at the new marketing year, and we still haven't sold anything to China, and we're sitting here wondering, where all these beans are going to go, on top of a big crop of corn that's coming in. And we're into bin cleaning season, and guys are going to have to move bushels to open up space for this new crop. And as we talk with buyers, everything he pointed out with regard to an undersold forward book is true. Buyers are telling us that they have the smallest forward book of purchases in most of their careers. So a lot of grain is going to be coming to town, and the market sees it. It knows it, and it expects it. And, if you look at the last couple of reports, USDA gives us a big number and the market moves higher. And I think most people expected that we would see a little bit of a lesser number coming out of Pro Farmer given the history, and we get a smaller number out of Pro Farmer, the market moves lower. So it's becoming this buy the rumor, sell the fact, but kind of keeping us postured in a bit of a sideways trade that has us now moving back lower. No big shockers here.
Yeah, and it's not like we're surprised that farmers didn't sell. They really didn't have a chance to sell at profitable levels this year. And so that's why we've seen a lot of farmers hold off waiting for these better prices. Okay, Joe, the latest private yield estimate came out this week from Allendale showing a yield of 187.5 bushels per acre. Do you think USDA, based on the methodology in September, do you think USDA will actually increase yield in the upcoming September crop production report next week?
No, I'd be shocked if the yield number went up and went above that 188.8. You got to remember the August number was survey based and it was satellite imagery based. The satellite imagery can be tricky, and it can play tricks on the trade. And I think that it did. And I think it played a trick on USDA. I think there's a lot of hidden problems out there with the crop. That being said, I think that something in the mid 180s is still very possible. Maybe low 180s is possible. I think it's a record yield. I think it's a record crop. Keep in mind that the acreage number is very high. And if anything, it probably moves higher versus current USDA estimates just based on the FSA data that's available out there. So, I think it's a big crop. I think a couple bushels here and there, you're still left in kind of an ugly, bearish looking situation.
Yeah, Peter Meyer said that on Crop Tour a couple weeks ago. It doesn't matter how much we trim back this yield, even a couple bushels per acre, you still have 97 million acres of corn out there, and that is the problem. All right, Mike, dryness that set in across the eastern corn belt. It is crazy to see how quickly the rain did shut off. Do you think that that's eating into the soybean crop production estimates?
I think there's room for a little bit of erosion, similar to what we saw last year. Last year, I think we can all recall that we had a bit of a dry finish, and ultimately the yields that were forecast in August did erode both on corn and soybeans, both from Pro Farmer numbers and USDA. And so as we talk about the road ahead, I think there's room for a little bit of erosion here. But I want to emphasize the word little, because we have to remember that while this is happening in the east, it's not happening throughout the entire corn belt and bean growing region or corn growing region. And so ultimately, the other parts of the country will buoy some of those losses. But as we look at this, I think we can all agree that coming off of big August yield numbers, there's a chance that we could see some deterioration in that yield. So this dryness is probably just one of those things to help that along.
Well, we could potentially be looking at a big crop in the western area of the growing region. And so now there's a question of, is there enough storage space this fall? But also we have this concern about low river levels. Which is the bigger concern? We're going to ask our marketing analysts that right after the break.